لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. I welcome you back to our level 3 course on Imam Saqqaf's Mukhtasar Fawa al-Makkiyya. And inshallah ta'ala, this course focuses on essential principles for Shafi'i students. This lesson is specifically focused on preferred views different to scholars' schools, or as the saying in Arabic goes, ikhtiyarat, right? Ikhtiyarat means preferred views للأئمة of the scholars مخالفة that are different to للمذهب, to the madhab that they subscribe to. So now we want to understand why and how some scholars hold differing views to their respective schools, which is a legitimate question, because if one looks at the likes of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, which is a textbook example, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah clearly has views which are his own ikhtiyarat. And as opposed to what some people think, these are not always views that are easier than the madhab holds, right? It's not dispensations. These are genuinely differing views. One such example is that the mu'tamad, or the relied upon view of the Shafi'i school, is that eating food that was prepared by fire, including camel meat, does not break the wudu, right? I believe that was the qawl qadim of the Shafi'i school. I speak under correction. But Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he holds this view, despite the fact that he transmits the Shafi'i madhab's opinion, and he writes the minhaj upon which the Shafi'i madhab is founded upon, or rather fatwa is based upon. He does not insert his own opinion as the madhab's opinion, and he wouldn't be able to, because the other scholars of the madhab would point it out. So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he demonstrates for us that it's possible to subscribe to a madhab and hold a different view from the madhab. Of course, we're not all Imam Nawawi, but the point is not whether we are qualified to do it or not. The point is whether it is possible or not. And again, this is distinct from breaking the ruling that was already made. We are not speaking about our previous dars, wherein we spoke about naqdu hukm al-qadi, where we break or nullify a ruling that was previously established. No, that's not what we're doing here. Here, the madhab's ruling still stands, and it still stands as the mu'tamad, or relied upon view of the madhab. What we are speaking about is a different view by a scholar within the madhab to what the madhab actually holds. So we're going to understand a bit about that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Let's look at our course outcomes again, which are consistent throughout the course. We are looking at a comprehensive understanding of Islamic law. We wish to master scholarly etiquette and ethics, which is predominantly what the first half of the book is about, which ends in this lesson, by the way. And then familiarity with key Shafi'i texts and terminology, which commences after this lesson, inshallah. And enhanced spiritual and intellectual growth, which is throughout the course, bi'idhnillah. This lesson focuses on pages 60 to 62. It's a fairly short lesson in relation to the longer lessons at the beginning, because we are now at an intermediate phase. We are transitioning over to the next major section of the book. We want to understand ikhtiyarat, or preferred views of scholars in the madhab, which are contrary to the madhab. We want to recognize the role of Quran, Sunnah and consensus when making judgments, or when assessing judgments and decrees, or ahkam. And then we want to understand some examples of preferred views by some scholars that may not be emulated. So despite the fact that some scholars hold views different to the madhab, their views in certain instances are considered anomalous, or on the fringes. They're not really well-founded views, and therefore they may not be emulated or followed in that regard. Some of the key concepts which carry over from our previous lesson is naqd, or the invalidation of a ruling, the hukm, which is the ruling itself, ijma', which refers to scholarly consensus, and ikhtiyar, which refers to a personal view. To set the tone, we ask a question to key off the lesson bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and that is, how is it possible that Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah holds views different to the views of the madhab. So we've technically given the answer to this question already, but now I need you to be able to articulate it as well. And importantly, we should also understand that even though Imam Nawawi holds a view different to the madhab, he's not saying that he doesn't agree with the madhab as in the madhab is incorrect. He just has his own preferred view besides what the madhab says. Tamam? And then in addition to that, we also know that it's possible for him to hold the view because still he's an independent scholar. He's a mujtahid, as it was described in our categorization before, mujtahidul fatwa or mujtahid fil madhab. And he has the ability and did a tremendous job at that of tarjih, right? Choosing the opinions upon which the madhab bases itself. And Allah knows best. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلومه وعلومكم آمين. الرابعة, the fourth point. We said that there are 3 or 4 discussions. This is the fourth of the discussions. اختيارات الأئمة, the preferred views of the scholars, the أئمة. اختيارات للأئمة مخالفة للمذهب. That's different to the schools, the respective schools. قال الإمام العلامة الشيخ عبد الله باسودان. This is a quote from his book كف الرعاء عن محرمات اللهو والسماع from لأحمد بن محمد بن حجر الهيثمي رحمه الله تعالى. So, no, that is not from كف الرعاء, excuse me. كف الرعاء is a separate book by Ibn Hajar. This is quoted في رسالة له in a monograph of Shaykh Basudan. Who is Shaykh Basudan? هو الشيخ عبد الله بن أحمد بن عبد الله باسودان al-Hadrami. He was from Hadramaut. He passed away in the year 1266. He mentions in his monograph or رسالة وقد حث وحرض فيها إلى إرشاد المحتاج والمضطر إلى أقوال العلماء مما فيه يسر في الدين. He says, certainly, he says he urged, حث وحرض, he urged and encouraged, guiding those in need, إلى إرشاد المحتاج والمضطر, guide those who are seriously in need or in dire straits, إلى أقوال العلماء, guide them to the opinions of the scholars, متى فيه يسر في الدين, so that we make things easy for people in the religion. Now, here we are speaking about a case of making things easy but in a legitimate way, guiding people towards easier views but not views that are anomalous or invalid. Tamam? And then he continues on this trajectory and he says, اعلم أن أئمتنا, know that our scholars, الشافعية, our Shafi'i scholars, رضي الله عليهم, may Allah be pleased with them, لهم اختيارات مخالفة لمذهب الإمام الشافعي. They have their own preferred views that go contrary to the madhab, to the school of Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. وَاعْتَمَدُوا الْعَمَلَ بِهَا, and they relied upon those views, meaning they practiced upon those views. لِتَعَسُّرٍ أَوْ تَعَذُّرِ الْعَمَلِ بِالْمَذْهَبِ, either because it was difficult to follow the madhab or because of some other excuse for which they preferred not to follow the madhab. Again, like I said, it's not always a matter of they follow the easier view. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that, as I don't know if I completed the issue earlier, but Imam Nawawi, he says that eating the meat of camels that was obviously cooked, that would break one's wudu, and one needs to re-perform a wudu before you can commence with ibadat. But that's not the mu'tamad view of the Shafi'i school, and clearly you can see that the Shafi'i school would technically be the lighter view between, Imam Nawawi's view and this view. So it's not always about things being easier or made easier, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Then he says, وَهِيَ كَثِيرَةٌ مَشْهُورَةٌ, and they are many and they are well known. وَعِنْدَ التَّحْقِيقِ فَهِيَ غَيْرُ خَارِجَةٍ عَنْ مَذْهَبِهِ. He says, in reality, this is not exiting one's own school, right? He says, وَذَلِكَ إِمَّا بِالْإِسْتِنْبَاطِ, because this is going to be done either through extrapolation, scholarly study, أو القياس, or because of analogy, أو الاختيارات من قاعدة له, or he follows a a principle, a general principle, a maxim, a legal maxim, etc. He follows that which is from the madhab, أو على قول قديم, or it's going to be based upon an older view in the madhab. So Imam Shafi's got his qawl qadim and he's got his qawl jadid. Now, that's a phenomenon that also needs to be explained, which technically forms part of the second half of the book, and we'll get to that inshallah ta'ala. It is something that comes up in our lessons, so sometimes I mention it in the Umdatul Salik lesson, sometimes in the Lubb al-Usul lesson. So it's a Shafi'i phenomenon, so it comes up regularly. I don't think we dealt with it thoroughly in this course, so inshallah ta'ala, as part of the second half of the book, we will explore all of that, inshallah. So he follows a qawl qadim, which is an older view from Imam Shafi'i's earlier madhab opinions, أو لدليل صحيح, or he has a different view from the madhab because he has some sort of an authentic evidence that he believes to be valid. And we'll speak a bit about that also. What happens when you come across hadith that you believe to be differing from or in contradiction to your own madhab? The Shafi'i school is very particular about this. لقوله رضي الله تعالى, and because Imam Shafi'i did say, of course, إذا صح الحديث فهو مذهبي. If the hadith is authentic, then it is my way, that is my opinion. Now, many contemporaries, in fact, I think since Imam Shafi'i said this till our day and age, there would have been those who would have attempted to misappropriate the Imam's words and oversimplifying a very complex issue. If you analyze the words, إذا صح الحديث فهو مذهبي. There's two parts here. The first part is إذا صح الحديث, if the hadith is authentic. The second part is that is the opinion of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Before we even move into the two parts, we understand the overall principle that he's laying down for whom? For his students, for Imam Muzani, for Imam Rabi', for Harmala, for Buwaiti. He's laying down a maxim that my madhab is based upon the authentic textual evidence, the Quran and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. That's the precedent that he's laying down. Now, the second thing that he says is إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث, meaning that he's leaving it open-ended. The hadith may be authentic, the hadith may be inauthentic. Why does he leave it open-ended as opposed to resolving it and just telling us what the hadith is? Remember Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, who's writing his madhab jadid, his new school, in the last 4 years of his life in Misr. He ended his career in Misr. So these are the 4 last years after accumulating many years of learning and teaching and researching and writing. So now Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala doesn't necessarily have access to authentication of all of the ahadith or all of the names of the rijal or all of the books that he used to have with him. So in certain instances where he does not or where he cannot for some reason come to a conclusion about the authenticity of a particular hadith, he doesn't close the case, because remember, others are still capable of doing that research. Who does he leave the task to? He leaves the task to the followers of his madhab who are scholars in their own right, the likes of Harmala, Buwaiti, Muzani and Rabi'. So they take the principles that Imam Shafi'i gave them and they now go through the madhab and they see, okay, here's a hadith. Imam Shafi'i wasn't clear about the authenticity of this hadith. According to my research, the hadith is not authentic, so we know that is not going to be the opinion of the madhab. This is the manner in which the statement should be understood. The misappropriation of the statement is when people think that, okay, if somebody can just tell me that this hadith is authentic, or if I can find an article on the internet that claims this hadith is authentic, then I can practice on that hadith because that is actually the Shafi'i madhab, not what the Shafi'i madhab says. So the brother finds a hadith on the internet and he sees that the hadith says, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل بعض نسائه فخرج ولم يتوضأ أو كما قال. The hadith reads that the Prophet ﷺ kissed one of his wives and then he exited, he prayed salah, he did not perform wudu. The narration goes something to that effect. So the person reads the hadith and he says, it says authentic. And then he says, well, remember Imam Shafi said if the hadith is authentic, then that's my madhab. So why is my teacher telling me that the Shafi'i opinion is that if I touch my wife skin on skin, then that breaks the wudu regardless of whether it's with desire or without desire. Clearly, the madhab is going against this hadith. So this is a misappropriation of that statement. There's several things happening here that's incorrect. Number one, the brother doesn't understand that this statement is only for those who are qualified to actually apply the statement. Number two, that means mujtahidun in the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. Number three, it's a little bit naive to think that Imam Shafi'i and the entire Shafi'i school was oblivious to that hadith and every other hadith that you happen to come across and think that it is authentic. So there is a system, there is a specific order of if I come across a hadith that appears to be authentic, that appears to contradict my madhab, then there's a system that I should follow. But again, that's a lesson to come in the second half of the kitab. Why am I mentioning it now if I'm not going to complete the story? Simply because the misappropriation of this statement, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي, that if the hadith is authentic, then this is my school. It's important to explain that yes, it's a true statement and Imam Shafi'i did make that statement, but it needs to be contextualized, it needs to be understood, and the implications of it needs to be seen through. As opposed to the person who says, I'm more of a Shafi'i than the Shafi'is. Why? Because the Shafi'is practice according to Shafi'i fiqh, I practice according to the authentic hadith, and Imam Shafi'i said that the authentic hadith is his madhab. It sounds like a really convincing statement, but unfortunately, it's an oversimplification of complex matters, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We proceed, inshaAllah. Al-Rabi'ah. Ikhtiyarat lil-a'imma mukhalifatan lil-madhab. We're still speaking about personal choices of the scholars that's different to the schools to which they subscribe. فمن الاختيارات العمل بمذهب مالك في أن الماء لا ينجس مطلقا إلا بالتغيير. Now again we're going to have several instances of masail being mentioned, and each mas'ala has a lot of details to it, especially because these are masail which the scholar felt which scholars felt, they would have a preferred view. So technically, you can already see that there's going to be a lot of detail. So we'll explain some of it and we'll skip over some of it, insha'Allah ta'ala. They can be found, the details can be found in comparative fiqh books like al-Mawsu'atul Fiqhiyya al-Kuwaitiyya or Fiqhul Islami wa Adillatuhu, or you can just find your own madhab's view about the issue. So here are some of the ikhtiyarat. Al-amalu, practice, بمذهب Malik, according to the school of Imam Malik, that says what? أن الماء, that water, لا ينجس, does not become najis, it does not become contaminated, مطلقا, at all, إلا بالتغيير, except if its qualities change. So we know the Shafi madhab is very specific. Qullatayn is your breaking point. If it's more than qullatayn, it doesn't easily become contaminated by the mere contact with najasa. No, only if changes happen. But the Maliki school says unrestrictedly, even if it's a little water, if it's a lot of water, the mere contact with najasa doesn't affect the water. It is only if it changes color, taste or smell that the water would now be considered mutanajjis or impure or contaminated. Tamam? So that's an example. Acting according to that view would be acting according to the opinion of the Maliki school, and that's legitimate. ومنها الاكتفاء في النية بالمقارنة العرفية. Another example is to regard as sufficient making the intention generally coincide with the opening takbir of the salah, as opposed to specifically accompanying the takbir from the beginning of the takbir till the end of the takbir. So the Shafi'i school has a very strict methodology here, that the niyyah for salah, mahalluha al-qalb, its place is the heart, but it must coincide with the first of Allahu Akbar, and it must continue till the ra and sukoon of Allahu Akbar. That the acute consciousness of purpose must be in one's mind from the very beginning till the very end of that takbir. Now, that is the strict rule according to the Shafi'i school. However, here we are saying that according to this ikhtiyar, this preferred view, it is sufficient to simply generally have it accompany. Say the niyyah before you say the Allahu Akbar. Generally be conscious in your heart at some point in the Allahu Akbar. Why? لأن القلوب, because hearts, لما أظلمت, when hearts become shaded, let's call it that, وضعفت, and when it becomes weak, عن القدرة, to have the ability على ما شرطوه, to do what the scholars describe, to be acutely conscious of your purpose. من مقارنة النية, to accompany your intention, للتكبير, for the opening Allahu Akbar, من أوله إلى آخره, from the beginning of it till the end of it, بالاعتبار, considering the fact الذي ذكروه, of the fact that they mentioned it must be a very specific way. الذي قيل فيه, they said about it, إنه خارج عن مقدور البشر, it is something outside of the capability of human beings. I don't believe it is necessarily so. However, the fact that there's this ikhtiyar is good, because I don't think anybody really has such a acute consciousness of an intention for that entire period, and Allah knows best. Here's another one. رأى جمع منهم حجة الغزالي نفع الله به. A group, or a large gathering of scholars, a large group of scholars, among them Imam al-Ghazali, may Allah benefit us with him, he opined that al-iktifa'u bil-muqaranati al-urfiyyah inda al-awam, that this type of general accompaniment of the niyyah is sufficient for the broader masses of Muslims. وَاخْتَارُوهُ وَقَرَّرُوهُ, they preferred this view and they established this view. لما في ذلك من المشقة والعسر, because it's something difficult and it causes a lot of hardship for people, especially with the massive rise in waswasa and related matters. ومنها نقل الزكاة, another example is نقل الزكاة, transferring zakah, ودفعها إلى صنف واحد, and giving it to only one category of recipient, أو إلى شخص واحد, or only to one person. That's a general ikhtiyar, even though according to the madhab it must be distributed to everyone. And then there's several other examples, and we'll read through these inshallah ta'ala. Al-mu'ata fi ba'd al-bay'. Trade without specifically communicating, I buy this from you for so much, I sell this to you for so much. بيع العهدة المعروف عند علماء الحضرموت, معاملة السفيه وكون الرشيد إصلاح الدنيا دون الدين, المزارعة والمخابرة والمفاوضة والمباشرة, رد الباقي بعد ذوي الفروض عليهم غير الزوجين إذا لم ينتظم بيت المال فإن فقد فلذوي الأرحام, ومنها ولاية الفاسق في النكاح. So of these issues, what I would like for the students to do بإذن الله تعالى is to write a sentence or two about each one of these masail, just explaining two things. Number one, explain what the basic mu'tamad is of the madhab. Right? So for example, al-mu'ata fi ba'd al-bay'. What's the mu'tamad of the school of the Shafi'i school in relation to bay'ul mu'ata? And then what is the ikhtiyar that's being mentioned here? So that's the homework exercise. You can do so with any 2 or 3 of these masail. You don't have to do all of them. Just choose 2 or 3 of these masail, and then you write 2 or 3 facts about the mu'tamad view of the madhab, and then this ikhtiyar. And you can post this in the forums of this course, inshallah ta'ala, and then I will have a look at it and we can discuss that further. But there's no need for us to mention each mas'ala in detail here. ومنها اختيار العمل بقول بعض العلماء في بعض مسائل الكفاءة بشرطه الآتي. There's another one there. ومنها جواز العمل بالقول القديم. Okay, this one is somewhat different. The permissibility of practicing on the qawl qadim. We spoke about this a bit earlier on, the older views of Imam Shafi'i. في من انقطع حيضها, specifically on the issue of the person whose hayd stopped لغير علة, for no reason, بأن تتربص 4 أشهر, that she should wait for 4 months, ثم تعتد ب3 أشهر, then she goes into iddah for 3 months. So that's a somewhat of a different issue there. It's on the permissibility of practicing on the qawl qadim for a specific issue. Then we have al-fasakh لغياب الزوج إذا تعذر تحصيل النفقة. And finally, إذا عم الفسق قبول الشهادة الأمثل فالأمثل. This is an interesting one. So there are strict conditions for shahada to be a witness in the court. But what about now in our day and age where, sin is so widespread that the strict conditions of shahada might just disqualify everyone from being a witness? Subhanallah. So then you go for amthal fal amthal, the next best and the next best, ila ghayri dhalika, and other points, mimma huwa madhkurun fi mahalli, which are mentioned in the specific places in fiqh. Then I would like you to have a look at this table, inshallah ta'ala. What we have here is essentially what lies ahead. We're not going to go through it here, but this is a summary of what lies ahead in the second half of the book, right? What is this? This is a basic historical topography of the Shafi'i school, beginning at Imam Shafi'i, then his madhab qadim, his madhab jadid, then how his madhab transferred or was transferred from the students of Imam Shafi'i all the way down till eventually we get to Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala and Imam al-Rafi'i and their contributions to the madhab and the various books that were written along the way, so that we can have a solid understanding when we speak about these books and the people, the scholars and the like in the second half of the kitab, inshallah. Then we will need to know where everybody fits in. So if you speak about one of the books, we've mentioned many books before, but if you have sort of a bird's eye view or a map of what to expect, then you know where to slot things in as they come up, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But that brings us to the end of this dars. We look at the lesson summary now. We spoke about the conditions for invalidation. That was in the case of breaking a law, adherence to texts, the role of consensus. We looked at some examples of rulings about ikhtiyarat, and alhamdulillah, that leads us to the end of the first half of the book and those fawaid. We are now ready bi'idhnillah for the second half of the book. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and accept it from us. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, subhanallahi wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله